I've made it my mission to make you tired of my voice by the time you're done watching all these videos. I've got another ranked game for you today, and I wanted to showcase again just one. We're playing Sky Strikers and Platinum ranks still, and I wanted to showcase to you some of just this game in particular. I feel like there's a lot to take away from this duel. One of the most important things in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is adaptability, being able to adapt to the current situation. When people tell me that a deck is brain dead, I don't like that word, because any deck in the game that has options, that includes decision making, can't be brain dead, because if you have to make a choice between what card effects you use in this situation versus that situation, you have to have a knowledge of the game, you have to have a knowledge of the options that you have, and when and also a knowledge of which is better in any given situation, right? So adaptability is very important in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I feel like a deck like Sky Strikers has a lot of things that you can do on the fly and a lot of decisions to be made that kind of set it apart, because like, okay, which card do I search? Which order do I use my cards in? How do I get my 3 cards in the graveyard to start off? Which isn't always the hardest thing in the world to do, but in certain situations, as you'll see soon, you kind of have to figure out as you go along. So we're up against a Grand Maju deck, and as you just saw, they've got a Macrocosmos face down, and we don't have anything in our hand that can deal with it, because before I get to do anything, they flip it face up. So any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. I'm like, alright, so that means I cannot get my 3 spells in the graveyard to start making my plays. What do? Well, we just have to kind of pick the board apart piece by piece, right? I activate my airspace, I set a Pot of Avarice face down, and I try to send it to the graveyard with the effect of airspace. The reason being, I will not be able to use Pot of Avarice this duel, so it's a useless card to me now. Might as well send it to the graveyard here and now. That way I can get this Engage, lucky top deck, and I get a Ray out of my deck using the effect of Engage. Normal summon Ray, I go into the battle phase, I swing in with Ray, my opponent tries to use Crackdown to yoink my monster, I chain Ray's effect. That's kind of why I didn't link summon right away, because that Ray would be banished. She's not going to the graveyard, there is no extra protection, so I kept her on the field. Now I make Shizuku here because Hayate would be able to attack directly, but I wouldn't want to send any cards to the graveyard, and I've got one shot at most of these things. I've got 3 copies of Hayate, 3 copies of Shizuku. My thought process here was, okay, it would be a waste to use Hayate here on a clear field. Now my opponent capitalizes on my thought process here, and they have a monster that can summon itself from the hand, which means that I just don't get to finish what I'm doing, right? I don't get to get that attack in, but I can use Raigeki, and here's where I don't fully agree with how my opponent chose to play. I feel like the logic with this card, what this card is Gizmic Orochi. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, banish 8 cards from the top of your deck face down and special summon this card. Now, I get the logic here. You know, you probably don't think that your opponent is going to be able to get over this card when you've crippled their deck in this way, so it's just a safe thing to have on the field, but by having Macrocosmos and this on the field at the same time, when I destroy this, it's not going to the graveyard. You cannot recycle its effect to keep on coming back, which, I mean, I don't know. I've never played a deck like the one that they're playing. I don't know if that's standard. It just feels like a weird thing to put together. So I Raigeki that problem monster is gone, and Shizuku will search my deck for another copy of Engage because the last one got banished. It's not in my graveyard, right? Turn change back over to my opponent. They get lucky off the top, and they get themselves a Pot of Extravagance. They can draw 2, and I believe they choose to set 1, end their turn. Now, it's a difficult spot to be in, right? It's a difficult spot to be in. You don't exactly know what you're up against. So I'm thinking I need to get rid of that Macrocosmos as quickly as I can while worrying about this face down card. I decide to make myself a copy of Nightmare Phoenix to destroy the Macrocosmos. Now my cards are going to the graveyard again. Bear in mind that everything up until this point has been banished. I activate Mecha Modules to send a copy of Airspace to the graveyard because it now will go to the graveyard. Had I tried to use it before, it would have been banished, and this card only activates its effect to summon Ray from the deck if it goes to the graveyard, so I couldn't do that until now. I go into my battle phase, get some damage, and I'm wondering, like, okay, what is my opponent, what are they doing here? Like, what's that face down? I don't feel any toggle, I don't feel like it's activatable. I link into a Zeke. Yes, I did just use, I had a link 2 and a link 1, I use it to make a link 2, and I go all the way down to a link 1. Again, I'm doing what I feel like is the most, I'm trying to be strategic here, I'm doing my best. Now, they make a little mistake here. They activate Ice Dragon's Prison, and I don't feel like, again, adaptability. I don't feel like they were expecting the duel to take this kind of turn, and I feel like they weren't paying close enough attention to the board state because of it. Target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field, but its effects are negated. Then banish 1 monster from both players' fields that have the same type as each other. You can only activate 1 per turn. Now, what I guarantee you my opponent thought was that a copy of Shizuku was in my graveyard because of what it took to get to this stage in the game. But no, at the point at which I Link summoned into the Nightmare Phoenix, Shizuku, you know, the Macrocosmos was still on the field, which means my Shizuku got banished by their card effect. So they were expecting to clear my field in one fell swoop, but they can't do that. The only thing they can get out of the graveyard is my Nightmare Phoenix. It's a different type. And so, yeah, the effect doesn't go through. I activate Widow Anchor, and I could try and yoink that Phoenix. I could do a number of things, but I don't feel like it's worth it in this situation. And realistically, they would get it back at the end of the turn because it's theirs now, right? So they get, again, a draw 2, and now they activate Soul Absorption. Now, it's a Grand Maju deck. I'm sure that they wanted things to go differently, but I've got a Ray in the graveyard now, so I'm not too mad about that Shizuku getting destroyed. In fact, it's a good thing because I can activate Ray's effect as they end their turn to allow myself to summon another copy of Shizuku, and Shizuku's effect says that if it gets summoned onto the field, you get to draw one in the end phase. So they just gave me a free draw, effectively. I am out of Shizuku's though, so I have to play carefully. Now, this is what I mean. This is where things get kind of fun, because I do have to play very carefully here. I do not have enough cards in my graveyard to activate the secondary effects of my spells and traps. Too many of my cards have been banished. I am low on resources. It was tense. So I'm like, okay, what do? I need to try and bait some stuff out. So I activate Kagari. Right? That way I can get myself back the card in my graveyard in the form of the field spell. I don't know what their face down is here. Now again, this is all being done not knowing what the face down is. I activate my field spell and they chain Unending Nightmare, which once per chain can destroy a spell or trap on the field. Not great, not ideal, but then a plan forms in my brain. A plan forms in my little soul brain. This is actually not a bad thing because I can get a Rose on the field. Then I'll activate Mecha Modules to send Rose to the graveyard, except I don't actually want to send Rose to the graveyard. Now, if I send Rose to the graveyard, my opponent can't respond to my spells or traps in their activation, but I still wouldn't have 3 spells in my graveyard if that happened. I'd be able to take out the Nightmare Phoenix and attack directly, but they don't know that. Or I could yoink it and attack directly, but again, they don't know that. Now, either of those things probably could have worked, but I was already dead set on this plan and dead set on trying to bait them out. They activate that effect again to try and get rid of my Mecha Modules, which is absolutely fine by me. I don't mind that in the slightest, because now I can normal summon Max C, and with the cards on the field, Link summon into Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. I can swing in. I took my monster back. I was dead set on taking my monster back and swinging in for game. Had things gone wrong, I also still had Widow Anchor and why have I forgotten this card's name? And this other card in my hand to try and make plays, you know, to recover. But yeah, that was. I feel like my opponent didn't respond well to me adapting to what they were trying to do. And that is that is the primary skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Decision making, deciding what order to do things in, what order did I search with Engage, because everything was getting banished. I wasn't able to get my effects in the graveyard, so every effect activation had to count. Every monster summon had to count. And so yeah, that's just kind of something that I wanted to put out there. Again, this is not. This is me just putting out some gameplay and commentating over it because I found it really cool. Now, you might not find it as cool as I do because you're not me. But if you are out there and you did find this useful or entertaining, a like would be very appreciated. Thank you for your time. Hope you have a fantastic day. Subscribe if you want more gameplay videos like this. I will be back in about a week to streams and more like in person, like with the face cam kind of videos. Until then, take care, friends.